Well, we can see that it's organic because the grass is not killed. That's a key point. So we've got some amazing biodiversity just in terms of our vines as well. We've got this hectare of Simeon and about a hectare of Merlot. Quite a lot of them have wine at the moment, yeah.
And you bottle in April.
Yeah.
So that will be the 2021 or 22?
21.
What's the symbol? Is there a significance of the symbol?
So this is something you find on like the burial grounds at Newgrange in Ireland. But yeah, almost all our vegetables now are grown from scratch. So good. I mean, we've had now with this cold spell, I think because it has these little spots in it that are dark, hardy. There's an amazing one called Goutte de Sang. But yeah, almost all our vegetables now he grows from scratch. We even do our own chickpeas and yeah. And so I guess for me, like the whole environmental thinking and particularly the biodiversity and the extinction that's going on right now on our planet, like it's for me that's kind of how I came, I guess, to thinking more about climate change and what exactly, and of course it's hitting us directly as well as farmers, climate change, and has been for quite a long time already, between the heat waves, the changes, frost and so on that are dramatically impacting farmers and will obviously get worse as we carry on if we don't do something about reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, stopping fossil fuels in fact. This is truly scary. And what's even scarier is that it's going up, even though we know all of this. Yeah. And even though, people have been ringing the alarm since the 70s. So what do we do to change it?
Well, I think, go ahead.
The thing that struck me recently, I've just finished a course with the SDG Academy online again, and the lecturer was Michael Mann. We've read his book, and I think he's a fabulous lecturer and presenter on the climate issues. But the thing that struck me was that if we go right the way back pre-dinosaur time, when the world was uninhabited by us, of course, there were volcanoes, there were massive amounts of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, the temperature was enormous and it was unbearable. And nature has managed to draw all that down with seashells absorbing the carbon to make their shells, and then that eventually goes onto the ocean floor. Trees have absorbed the carbon dioxide, the ground has absorbed the carbon dioxide, and that's all locked down. Mm-hmm. And then we arrive, and in the space of around about 100 years, we've dug up all of that stored carbon, the fossil fuels, and burnt it and put it back into the atmosphere. And the issue, of course, is that the fossil fuel industry, we now knew about that from the 1970s, 1980s. I listened to something the other day that was saying that by the time that becomes well known that there is climate change caused by the fossil fuel, it will be too late to do anything. I mean, with that knowledge, how on earth can they continue to do that? Why don't we all say, well, we've got to stop immediately?
But how do we make that change? It's like, how do we get people to, yes, we can, vote, we can make sure politicians are, but it's almost like there's something more fundamental, there's something underneath that. It's finding a way back to a more fundamental way of being happy.
I think that we tend to think, well, there are these great activists and they're going to change everything, but you're absolutely right. It comes down to each and every one of us making every step that we take cognizant of what's going on. I mean, it's just like, it's small changes, And yet we're looking at huge changes that are going to happen and are happening, and we can't stop, but we've got to do something now. And we can't look to our neighbor, to the people across the pond to do, oh, they're going to solve it. It's their fault. No. So, I mean, I think that if each person takes if you have a tiny 1/4 acre and you make that wild, and you try to put as much biodiversity as you can. You don't put anything in it. You use all your compost. You try to have chickens. What can I do right now?
Yeah.
I think that may be the ultimate goal. In my opinion, the bulk of the population of the world sit in the camp that says, I'm okay, how's it going to affect me? What are the changes? I can see something, there's massive floodings or there's but I don't think that the bulk of the population actually realise the effects that are going to arrive with food and water insecurity, mass migration, nations being threatened because of that, spread of disease because the whole climate is moving, and whereas where the deserts used to be, those deserts are going to be further north and further south. That's going to change. So I don't think the bulk of the population can actually perceive that. There isn't a momentum, there isn't an uprising. That's what it needs. It needs an uprising. There's little bits of it. The youth movement is fabulous. It's moving forward. Yeah. But moving forward also with a great deal of anxiety and worry and people feeling very responsible and frustrated that they can't do things. But we have to motivate the entire populace to say, actually, we need to make systemic and drastic changes urgently. We're trying to move this massive amount of people to say we've got to change and we've got to motivate them. And I think the more spiritual side of things is a sort of trickle way of going when we've actually it's so urgent, we've got to move in a very drastic and got to change the world. How do we do that?
So it's interesting actually when I did the climate talks on Zoom for I offered some climate talks, you guys were both on them I think, but it was interesting, I think when you raised the thing, 60% of people feel like, it's over there, it's not over here. And my brother who lives in Victoria, Canada, said, yes, he had finally realized that actually it was there. There was rationing on how much fuel they could only put 10 gallons or 10 liters in their car at a time or something crazy. And so he was like, this is actually affecting me. And before he was like, it's over there. It's
they had that huge heat wave up there.
And the massive heat wave.
The heat wave here in France in 2003, there were 30,000 people died as a result of that heat wave.
Yeah.
But that's passed us by. We've looked at that and go, that's really sad. But they're going to become more frequent, and people will begin to realise that we have a capacity as human beings to store that elsewhere. That's happened, it's really bad. As a result of climate change. That's even worse. Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, let's see how it goes. We have a capacity to deal with crisis by ignoring it.
We're actually going to all be way, way happier if we take this, I guess, less consumption approach. For me, it really is about that. There's not a lot of talk about decreasing, none of the politicians want to say, we need to decrease consumption, we need to decrease our use of electricity. They don't want to talk about that, but really we kind of do. If we're going to solve this problem, we have to change. That has to come back. We have to make changes from decreasing our consumption of meat or going vegetarian, decreasing our use of fossil fuels, absolutely, changing cars. I know you talked about that. Electric.
Clothing is
massive.
Wash your clothes. I tend to try to hang out my clothes. I dry a little bit the towels and then I hang them out. But this one woman wrote, but I used to not like to see clothes hanging around my house. So it would never occur to me that, and you're like, you need to hang your clothes around your house. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
No laundry visible.
That's right.
And to me, when you see the lines outside the apartment buildings in Italy and Portugal and parts of southern France, it's beautiful. There's
But
beauty
in the
in all of
suburbia,
that
it's like, no,
color
it's like
and
chickens. Oh,
movement
that was
Yeah.
our ancestors on the
Well,
farm.
we hear this argument with wind turbines, don't we?
Yeah.
People will say they're ugly and all this. We haven't got time for that. We have to make these drastic changes. We have to go down these roads. We have to come away from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
It's incredible. The fossil fuel production has polluted the planet. 9 million people die of respiratory disease linked directly to the use of coal. The fact
Let's say that again, 9 million.
Yeah. So the fact that it's warmed the atmosphere, there's massive amounts of greenhouse gases as a result of that. It's a dirty fuel. It's tearing up the inners of the planet. Coupled with that, of course, is the production of plastics, which now we know have grossly polluted the oceans, and we're all eating those microbeads and microplastics because they're in our food, they're in our fish. The waste is enormous. So these are the issues. We've got to convince this bulk of the population to say we've got to find an alternative, and we've got to convince the fossil fuel industry also, because they're human beings. They're the same as us. They're employees and employers. The fastest growing job in America at the moment is wind farm technician. That's indicative of the fact there is money to be made, there's innovation to be created, there's jobs to be had. Really can increase the economy just by going down a different route. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, but I think if you're driving your fancy car into your big house and you have 7 houses and it's really hard to turn off that spigot of fuel. No, I mean, just if you work for those companies, and I don't know. I mean, I think it takes the groundswell of pushing, saying it's not okay and you should be ashamed of yourself for going out and buying that gigantic car.
I totally agree. And to me, we've kind of got to have a bit of that about SUVs and all that. Like, we have to change our like, that is not okay. It's not, keeping on doing things that are clearly dangerous for the planet.
So I think the big car, the big house is look at me.
Yeah.
And now it's like, No.
Exactly. But it's the biggest growth.
It is.
It's the biggest growth of all the car sectors. So how does that work?
If we take smoking, for example, smoking was very successfully done. The tactics employed to encourage people to smoke, even though we know that it causes cancer and lung disease and all sorts of problems. We call them, like coping mechanisms. They're unhealthy coping mechanisms, like smoking and alcohol and drugs and those sorts of things. Go to something that's good. Go for a walk in nature, or plant some trees, or do something good for the planet. Use those as coping mechanisms, because they release good endorphins and hormones, and they're the things to go down. That's another direction we could try and convince people to do, as opposed to we're bustling along in our lives. It'll be okay. Yeah, I know there's a bit of a problem. Yeah, I know there's a risk, and then suddenly it's a declaration. You are in trouble. We are in trouble, and that's where we are now.
And it's not just us; it's our grandchildren and their children, and I mean, it might be okay. We might be able to handle 100-degree weather every now and then, but they're going to have it every day. They're not going to have the food. They're not going to have the fish. They're not going to have. I mean, it's just not going to be there because it just cannot tolerate the heat.
We could if we make the decision now, if we act now, we could actually not reverse it. That's not going to happen, but we can. It is damage limitation. We can make a major difference, and we can save lives because of it.
Oh, totally. The pollution in the air as well. How much, like, the car fumes are killing people in cities.
Oh, definitely they are. We just don't know it. Even right here with all the cold, we have our pollution particulate matter has gone way up. It's affected me because of people burning wood and outdoor fires and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't think about
we
those
see it in the
things.
valley now with the cold weather.
Yeah, it's unconscionable that we keep doing this.
So how do we have an impact? How do we reach out to the masses, to the bulk of the population, to say, come on, let's all join together and
people know there's a problem, but they're not taking the next step to do something about it. I think that's where we are. There are a few hangers out there, but that, you know, they still believe in UFOs. So it's the, you know, we need to give people ways to make differences in their own lives, and that will impact everybody else's.
Yeah, that's where, you know, the little diagram I shared a while ago with our group, I found so useful, because it was, you know, what are you good at?
Yeah,
what are you passionate about? What do we need? What do we need? Yeah, and where's the overlap? What can you do that's going to make you be kind of motivated for this? And there's space for everybody, whether you're an artist, whether you're an organizer, and to get involved and to make a contribution by joining groups, like doing the training that we did, and then to use that education to share it through presentations, through art like Dorothy does, through books, writing books.
It's every single thing you do, it should enter in. It is the grand thing happening to the world. So every single decision you make should include climate. How am I impacting climate when I do this?
Yeah.
And not just for individuals, that's big, all businesses.
Right.
All businesses should be thinking down that road. You know, the decision we make as the executive board, is that conducive to looking after the planet? That's where big businesses should be going. Government exactly the same. They should be making these decisions. You know, it is giving permission to this new mine or this oil drilling, is that conducive to healthy? No, absolutely not. So then don't agree to it.
And it should be broad. It should be the light pollution, the land use, the biodiversity, the consumption, everything.
Irrespective of, we need energy. Yes, okay, we'll find an alternative. Well, it costs a lot of money. Yes, we'll find an alternative.
Is that the right thing?
We don't have a choice.
We need to choose the right path.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
If we just do it every time, instead of saying, we always do this, we always do that.
What's the most important thing to do to make a difference?
Well, I think the current theme is talk and share the information. I listened to some articles yesterday that were talking about it's actually going to take a rising up of the people, and no one wants to advocate revolution, even though we're in the right country for that. But maybe it does. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take a rising up of the population to say enough is enough. You know, you're not making the decisions for our health and our safety and our children's and their children's, their future. We've got to perhaps take to the streets, or we've got to take action that forces governments, forces the fossil fuel industry, forces big businesses, because that's where the energy is, that's where the money is, that's where the power is. That they're the people that can really make a difference very quickly. We need to speak as one people to if that's the right, grammatically right, I'm not sure, but we need to, as a populace, to say, right, change and change now.
I think at the same time, the biggest piece is to stop burning stuff.
Absolutely.
Just stop burning stuff. Everywhere across the board, that's the biggest bang for the buck, and try to get other people to stop and try to shame those that are burning.
And I guess it's every action that we can take, like individually, informing ourselves, absolutely sharing with others, voting, petitioning, and then everything you can on your personal front, from changing to green electricity supply, very easy to do in France. You can literally do it in 5 minutes. Changing your, obviously this is a bigger expense, more difficult, but insulating your house properly, doing everything that you can to decrease your consumption of all of these things.
Right.
And thinking about how you can slowly move towards making your changes.
Yeah, try to wild your land.
Exactly.
And stop cutting your grass with your, lawn tractor, blowers. Why do you need blowers?
I think also to stop with the small excuses of why we don't do something. So an example would be, I'm not going to buy an electric vehicle because I've heard there's a problem with the batteries, or I'm not in support of
it's
wind
hard
turbines
to find places to plug in.
We're in transition, and there is no perfect solution. We we've got to stop using fossil fuels. And yes, there is a problem with the batteries with EVs, but there won't be eventually, because if we go down that road, we're showing what our intention is, we're getting the industry to invest, they will come up with better solutions, and we will end up in a better place.
Yeah.
Right.
But whatever the excuse is for why you don't do something, or why you don't support something because of those small things, but that's transition, and it will change.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is whatever decision we do, with this here, fossil fuel, we have to stop.
Yeah.
There's no question of that. There's no question of, well, can we do a little bit of it, or it's pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere all the time. And when you look into it, the sciences we've done with our training, you know, the flaring that goes on because they can't, the wells that are never capped properly, they continue to push out methane. I mean, there's any number of injustices that go on that if we found out, we'd be horrified. If the public found out what was going on truly with the fossil fuel industry, they would be horrified. And that's, you know, they need to go out and be educated and understand this, and then say enough is enough and stop.
Yeah.
And that if tomorrow we stop buying something,
it's gone.
it's gone.
It's gone.
Because that is exactly what they listen to.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people understand that. And the boycotts that have been done in the past have made huge changes because they have to listen, because that's dollars for them.
Yeah.
So I think we should be thinking along those lines too. Like, stop buying things in packaging. Just refuse to buy it and it'll go away.
Absolutely. Trying to fall back in love with, or falling in love with the earth, and being in wonder at the majesty around us, from, you know, even the tree that's stuck inside concrete in the path and in the city, like putting out its spring leaves. There's wonder all around us all the time. We will act differently if we change our perspective. Thank you.